Hey everyone, welcome to the Building Excellence podcast. I've got Ryan Hamm on me, Coach Hamm actually with me over at St. Leo University down in Florida, and really excited to have you. So thanks for being on.
Yeah, thanks, Bailey. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to having some dialogue and conversations here that hopefully can help some people out.
Yep, absolutely. So if you wouldn't mind, just kind of get started. Where did you grow up? What was growing up like, and how did it all get started for you?
So I grew up in Maysville, Kentucky, a small town about an hour southeast of Cincinnati, about an hour northeast of Lexington, Kentucky, in a real family-rich environment, small town, down-to-earth people where basketball runs deep. Packing high school gyms, middle school gyms, AAU tournaments. So from an early age, a basketball was put in my hand and fell in love with it. And I think a lot of that has to do with exactly what you're talking about, as far as like just growing up around it and having it be a part of your life from an early age. And you can make that decision whether you want to fall in love with it or pass it to the side. And for me, it was definitely something that I fell in love with and very thankful for my hometown. Try to get back there as much as I can, but a little difficult sometimes, definitely during a pandemic. But I love Maysville. It's been great to me, and I'll forever call it home.
Yeah. So did you have any siblings growing up?
Yeah, two younger brothers. So as you can imagine, backyard and driveway basketball, one-on-one games, and horse, and you name it. It wasn't always basketball. It could have been baseball, soccer, football, any of them. Very competitive, and I think that drove us to anything we did academically. Who was going to have the highest GPA or ACT score? We were always kind of competing against each other, even though we're all about 2.5 years apart. That bar was always trying to be raised by someone out of the three of us. But we all kind of grew up around basketball. I'm the only one that's kind of stuck with it. My middle brother's in Washington D.C. right now, as an accountant, and my youngest brother is actually in med school. He's finishing up his rounds and looking to go be a doctor. So all three of us have kind of taken our paths differently. Not in Kentucky, obviously anymore. None of us are, but they're definitely huge pieces of advice in my life that I can go back to and talk to about anything. And I think having opportunities growing up on the playing surfaces and all of that played a factor in that for sure.
Yeah. So was competition always relevant in your family?
For sure. Myself and my middle brother, because we're closer in age. I'm the
Sure.
oldest. We kind of drove each other crazy at times, whether it's one-on-one games in the driveway or even academically. I think more so with us, like him and I, the academic piece. He's a smart guy, so he's always trying to beat this test score or this GPA or finish higher in his class. And I think now we kind of see it in the like social realm, like what city are you gonna live in next, or how many people can you connect with, all of those things. So different ways of competitive banners, but they still exist for sure. And then my younger brother, we're 5 years apart. So there wasn't as much athletically that we could compete against. Now we get on the golf course where it's a little doesn't matter how old you are or your
Yeah.
experience. We get out there and we definitely compete. Um, we're way more, I think, trying to help each other out versus that competitive side outside of golf course.
Yeah. Obviously, being in Florida, I think you might have the upper hand at golf
I
outside of
know,
basketball. There's not much time that you get outside of it, but when you can, I'm
right?
sure you have the upper hand.
We both have busy schedules. Obviously, him in med school, me with college basketball, but my location definitely allows me to play a little bit more than he does, and time of the year and months and temperatures don't always play a factor with me as they do him. But
Yeah.
we haven't been able to play in the last couple summers, so hopefully this summer that changes and we can kind of see who has bragging rights.
Yeah. Absolutely. Um, so with academics being a central focus, as you mentioned, how did that was that like something your parents instilled in you as being good academically, or does that just come kind of naturally?
It was definitely something that like they didn't want us to push off to the side or take for granted. I think how you do one thing is how you do everything, or how you approach things specifically. Not everybody's going to be a 4.0 student, but how you approach it and how you work academically, I think translates in a lot of different areas of your life, because there's going to be subject areas that you may not like or you're better at than others, but you got to be able to push through those. And the same thing is going to happen in life, whether it's dealing with a coworker at work or a job responsibility that you don't necessarily like, could be a neighbor, any of the which, you got to be able to push through that. So I think more of those qualities were instilled in me from the parental side of things, but I think I've always had a intrinsic way about me to just try to be my best. I have this thing where I say be a champion, and that carries over to everything that I do. So champion friend, champion brother, champion coach, champion student, whatever it is. Like I want to be a champion at it. I want to be the best I can be, and that competitive nature that I think athletics drove out of me carried over to academics, where I wanted to get A's on tests. I wanted to finish with a 4.0. I wanted to finish better than the person next to me. So that drove me. And then for a lot of people, it's a little bit easier to procrastinate, I would say. And that's just never been me. Like I
Yeah.
hate putting things off to the side. So getting things done ahead of time and uh, showing that I want to do well and showing that it matters to me, I think helped with my relationships, whether it be professors in college or teachers growing up. I kind of had some of that benefit of the doubt on some assignments where it's like, okay, he's giving his best, he's on top of it, he's not waiting till the last minute to get something in. All right, boom. They'll work with you a little bit more. You can have those conversations where some people don't have that opportunity if they're waiting to the last minute.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great point too. I'm sure we'll touch on it here in a second about coaching and just those qualities that they translate into preparation and everything for coaching. But going back to high school, you played basketball. When did you start realizing like, hey, I have an opportunity to play at a higher level here after high school?
Well, I really didn't think I wanted to play in college. I was surrounded by a lot of good players at the high school level. Fortunate to play with some guys that have played professionally and in the NBA and national champions. So they stole a lot of the spotlight from me, and I didn't have much responsibility other than just get the ball past half court and get it to one of these guys. They're
Yeah.
really good. So I didn't. I knew I could play a little bit. I always believed in myself and had some good games or opportunities where it's like, okay, you can do that. But I knew I wanted to get into coaching, so I was kind of looking at the like managerial route, college wise. But it was really my junior year summer playing AAU basketball. I had a really good summer playing with some great guys and started to get some scholarship opportunities, and that interests me because until then it was just being a role player on a really good team and didn't know exactly what that meant as far as a future playing in college. So ran with that, had a solid senior year high school wise, but still wasn't totally sure what I wanted to do. But I had a high school teammate that was going to play at Thomas More, where I played right outside Cincinnati. He said, just hey, just come to an open gym. Like come out, play. Doesn't mean anything. Like they've already stopped recruiting you because you told them you didn't want to play. But just come play. Like nobody really cares. We need another guy, whatever. So I went out. I hadn't touched a basketball. This is 6 weeks beyond our high school season wrapping up. Hadn't touched it. I've been working out, running, lifting, doing some different things, but I literally had not touched a basketball once. Showed up to the open gym, and had a really good like night playing wise, and felt like I was in better shape maybe than some of their guys. And afterwards, one thing led to another, and before I knew it, I was committed to play at Thomas More for the next 4 years. And if my friend wouldn't have had that conversation or persuasive talk to just come play, I don't think that would have ever happened. But I'm so thankful for that. I tell him every time I talk to him, like, you're the whole reason I played college basketball, because I was kind of moving on to other directions and maybe starting some different routes in my own life. But that was awesome, and I wouldn't change anything about it. I was a little hectic because at that time, I mean, it's summertime. You already got your college plans. Your parents are already thinking like, all right, he's going here, this scholarship, whatever, and had to revamp completely the plans. But it was definitely worth it, and I loved every bit of it.
Yeah. Did you have a place you were going to school?
Yeah, I was actually going to go to Xavier in Cincinnati. I was set up to be a student manager there with Chris Mack, my high school coach. Had a really good relationship with him. I had met with them several times on getting things started that summer. Worked a camp actually with them. I'd already been approved in that process and was rolling with it. And then, like I said, it was a complete 180 flip, just a random summer Wednesday night going to play in an open gym that I didn't think was gonna mean anything other than a good night of fun with friends and playing some basketball for the first time in a while. But it actually ended up changing my trajectory for the next 4 years. And yeah, it was definitely interesting. Not a lot of people would ever believe that. And definitely Chris Mack at Louisville now and having a lot of success. I think it would have been a neat opportunity to learn from them for sure, no doubt. But like I said, I wouldn't trade anything.
Yeah, you're just too good they couldn't ignore you. So
I, I don't know about that. I think I had a really good night, and like I said, they had talked to me before
sure,
the
sure.
process, but I had been upfront honest with them that I wasn't sure I wanted to play college basketball, and just something about having the ball in your hands and being out there with guys that, especially having a high school teammate that was there with me, I think played a huge factor. And I don't know that ball gets in my hands and it's just like I don't know magic. And I couldn't pass up the opportunity if I had 4 more years to do that versus giving it up.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that makes total sense. I want to go back to a point you just talked about a little bit ago, just playing on a really good team, getting the ball across half court and just being able to dish it out to some guys that were pretty good high level players. But what made you maybe more of I already know who you are as a person, but more of a team oriented guy instead of more about all about me? Like why were you a team oriented person?
Well, we talk about having two brothers. Like, I don't think I could be selfish in a household knowing that I wasn't going to be able to always get it my way. I was going to have to share at a very early age. And then I can also thank my like youth coaches for that. I mean, we're a huge fundamental team and sharing the basketball. And I'm very thankful that I played for coaches growing up that weren't always about wins and losses, but more so about teaching the game, teaching teamwork, and life lessons through the game of basketball versus so caught up in winning and losing. And when you have a bunch of great guys and I mean, high school guys that I played with are guys that I'd played with since fourth grade. So I knew them as a friend and not wanting to let them down. And I think you can accomplish a lot of great things when you deeply and genuinely care about the people that you're trying to accomplish it with versus kind of everybody out for themselves or your own personal agendas and accolades that maybe you're trying to achieve. And then we also knew like we had one guy, Darius Miller, who's played in the NBA, played at University of Kentucky, national champion there. Like we also knew he was the guy, so it wasn't
Yeah.
like anybody was going to steal that thunder from him or lightning from him. He was going to be able to be the man no matter who else was on the team. But then also just knowing where else I've won in life. Like I never want to lose a game. I'm super competitive, but at the same time, like having a relationship off the court with Jesus and God, like I know that like he was selfless. He served others. I think being a point guard naturally, you have to be willing to serve others. Like you got to get the ball out in different ways, and I always kind of use that analogy to myself and the point guards that I coach now specifically, but just having that mentality of it's not about me, it's never going to be about me, really helps for sure. And uh, sometimes that can be difficult when you get caught in the heat of the moment, but you always got to be grounded and know exactly what you stand on and who you stand with.
Absolutely. So, did you have a favorite player that you wanted to emulate growing up?
Uh, yes and no. I mean, I a lot of it came from like who my dad liked or who he had on TV. He's always like watch this guy or watch that guy. But a lot of it also got caught up in who my friends liked, and I couldn't like the same guy. Like you gotta like somebody
Yeah.
different. So if they were a Kobe fan, you had to be a T Mac fan, or if they were an AI fan, you had to be a Steve Nash fan.
Uh-huh.
A lot of that got caught up in it, but as far as just pure playing wise, I just said his name, but Steve Nash for me was someone I always just enjoyed playing. He made it look effortless with the basketball in his hands, his passing, his shooting. And I felt like I never saw, at least watching him growing up, a teammate that didn't like him because they knew he was going to get them the ball. He was going to make their life easier. He was going to put them in positions where they could score, they could be successful. And he's always going up, putting his arm around somebody and talking to him. You always see the pictures of him and Amari Stoudemire like grouped together when they had their great Phoenix team. But I think just hearing what his teammates had to say about him, he was famous for all those touches. I think people, if you go back and study and Google, like he's the one that really made that popular. Like the amount of touches that you have, hand claps or slaps on the shoulder, like, hey, let's go, man. He really made that popular, the positive energy, the positive leadership. So that always stuck with me. And then just being a point guard myself, like it was natural because that was the same position I was playing.
Yeah, that's a good guy to emulate for sure.
Yeah, I never got to Steve Nash's level, but I was always trying, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome. So what about coaches? Do you have some really good coaches growing up that really kind of were mentors to you and helped you get to where you wanted to be?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm super, super thankful. And I don't know if I'd be where I am right now if I didn't have those coaches at an early age. I played for the same guy, fourth grade through eighth grade. And like I said, he really laid the foundation as far as teamwork, fundamentals, basketball IQ, and like got me off to a great start from knowing the game of basketball. And then in eighth grade, I kind of transitioned over to another guy, Mike Conway, who was like a second father to me. I might call him sometimes before I call my dad after games or big recruits landed or whatever it is. Something big happened in my life. He's somebody that I'm calling, or if I'm going home to Maysville and wanting to catch up, whatever it is, like he's at the top of my list. And I think when I started playing for him is when I really started. You talk about that belief as a player. He really instilled the confidence in me. Like, hey, you're pretty good. Like, hey, you can do this. Hey, let's work on this to get you better. But then also just like who he is as a person, how he treats people, his work ethic, I think carried over into me. There were never times where we may have a 6 to 8 o'clock practice or after school practice, and he's always there and he's always down to stay 30 minutes, an hour 30 later, working with individual guys, whether it be on shooting or free throws or just talking to them. And I think like those qualities more so than anything I picked up on, like he could have been doing a million other things. He had sons of his own. He had family at home. He had no relation to any one of us on our team, but would pick us up, take us all to games together. No school bus. Like it was the back of his expedition. We're all hopping in 7 deep and driving to tournaments all across the state of Kentucky and Ohio and wherever he could find tournaments for us. And he didn't have to do that. He very could have easily said, I've got my own kids. I've got my own life. But he loved basketball and he loved kids and he loved helping kids with basketball. And that's been huge for me. And then I had great high school and college coaches too. Obviously, you have different relationships sometimes with them because there's quote unquote more at stake, especially at the college level with wins and losses. But even at the high school level for us, knowing that we had such a talented group and high expectations on us, there was a lot more pressure built in to win. But my high school and college coaches also like they're huge factors and guys that I can call at any time. But I also do want to say my freshman year, I was playing JV basketball, and the coach actually left. He took another head job after my freshman year, but the energy required for everyday practice that I try to bring now every time to our practices, even when I played, started with him because he's diving on the floor with us. He's all over the place. And I remember he always says something to me that stood out. It doesn't always apply to everyone, but from where I grew up, like I told you, it's a small town. Like there's not a lot of big city mentality to any of us, but he was always saying to me, like, leadership didn't have an age. So as a freshman, like he wanted me to, he saw qualities in me that he's like, hey, it doesn't matter if he's a senior, it doesn't matter if he's a varsity starter. Like, if he's not working hard, let him know about it. Like, leadership does not have an age. You can tell him how you feel and hold him accountable. Then he always talked about, like, he always said, be a big city guard. And I never knew what that meant coming from like a small town. Like, we go to big cities, quote unquote, Cincinnati or Lexington for a tournament, but be a big city guard. And I thought, asking him later like what he meant with that, it had nothing to do with how I played, but it had more to do with my communication and vocal. I think him growing up in a city, like you playing out on playgrounds and parks, like you got to talk or they're going to forget about you and you're never getting back in the game, or you're going to sit at the end of the bench, or you're going to be sitting on a playground bench wondering why you didn't get picked up for a game. Like, you got to be comfortable opening your mouth. And sometimes it's saying some stuff that some other guys may not want to hear, but I never knew what he meant until later down the road. I went back to one of his practices or games and asked him, like, what were you talking about when you were telling me to be a big city guard? I'm a freshman in high school, never been to the big city or grew up in a city in my life. Like, what are you talking about? And that's when he said that to me, and it sticks with me. Now, obviously, like I said, it doesn't apply to everyone, but in that situation for me, it was definitely something that I now see what he was trying to get out of me, and how much just being a vocal leader sometimes is the best thing. And there's going to be guys that lead by example and never say a word, but they're always going to do the right thing. You can always count on them. And you need those guys. Like, you need them in your locker room, you need them in your life. They're huge factors, but you also need sometimes somebody to open their mouth and verbalize it to you, what they're asking of you or what they need from you to kind of move in the right direction, or in a direction that helps the team, helps you individually, whatever the situation might be. And that was huge for me.
Yeah, man, there's so much great stuff in just what you just said. But one thing that I think about a lot of times is that confidence and the belief that some of those coaches and maybe even your teammates and your friends kind of helped instill in you at a young age. Because when you understand that you have some confidence in your abilities, it comes from your preparation, obviously, first and foremost. When you have people around you that believe in you, it gives you a mentality that you can go and do just about anything if you work hard enough at it. And so obviously that was instilled in you from some great coaches that believed in you. And obviously it's something that probably still is important in your life as you coach other people and helping develop them as people. Um,
Yeah, confidence is key in everything that you do, and there's going to be situations that maybe you don't have experience in or you're uncomfortable with, but like, if you don't believe in yourself and you don't have other people believing in you, it's hard to accomplish anything. And there's so much of this mentality of like, I want to prove someone wrong. Well, that comes from people not believing in you. But for me, it's always been more so like, I I don't want to let the people down that do believe in me. So instead of trying to go out and prove X, Y, and Z wrong, like, who's to say they don't believe in you? Like, that's just some outside naysayer voice in your head that's saying they don't think I'm good enough or they don't think I can do this. Versus the other approach to it, you've got all these people in your circle that have helped you get to the point that you're at, or know you're capable of being more. I don't want to let those people down. And that could be siblings, that could be friends, that could be parents, coaches, anybody. But that whole, and I get it. Like, there's definitely chips on the shoulders where you feel like you've been doubted or wronged or whatever. You didn't get a job or you didn't get the playing time, whatever the situation is. But for me, I've always tried to make that secondary versus the primary focus of, hey, I've got some great people in my corner and they believe in me and I don't want to let them down. So that contributes to the work ethic. That contributes to the confidence, because they're the ones at the end of the day that are going to be there, win or lose. The people that quote unquote doubt you or wrong, like, they were never really on your side anyways. So if they're not there at the end of the day, you didn't lose anything. You still have the people that are there for you the most, and that's a huge thing. I think a lot of people can kind of miss out on, is they're always trying to prove somebody wrong. What about the people that are there for you, that believe in you, that you want to show that they're right? Like, show them that you're right, for giving you the confidence, giving you their time, giving you their energy to boost you up and make you feel good, and also call you out on what you do wrong. Like, those are the people that you got to remember at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And going on that too is surrounding yourself with people that believe in you, but at the same time, not just believe in you and they kind of say you're always going to be great, but people, like you said, when you're playing, that speak truth in your life and are honest with you, that give you honest feedback, and that will help make you better, just like iron sharpens iron, that type of mentality. And speaking of that, like what about your parents? Were they pretty impactful in your life, and were they those types of people that really instilled that in you as well?
Absolutely. The constructive criticism piece is such a critical component to any kind of growth. Like you got to get out of your box sometimes. And you got to have somebody tell you like, hey, you're not good enough right now, or hey, you're doing this wrong, but you can do it better. Like you can be better. You can be better. And I think both my parents were huge like role models for me in that sense. Like I understand being from the area that we grew up in, a lot of opportunities maybe aren't there for some people in a small town, but like they never were short-sighted in that. They were always thinking big picture and helping myself and my two younger brothers like get to where we wanted to get to. And the amount of time and energy and sacrifice that they made as individuals and as parents, like I can never thank them enough for. But the amount of times coming back from games or getting home from games and or getting a report card back or anything, just having those healthy conversations with your parents that some people miss out on or take for granted or don't always have. I was lucky. I was fortunate to have both mom and dad in the picture from day one, and also grandparents on both sides that were the same way. Those truthful, healthy conversations. Hey, like what you just did is not okay, and I know you're better than that. Or hey, you did a really good job with this. I'm proud of you. Hearing those words on a consistent basis definitely helped me to this day, and I'm very very thankful for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's nothing more powerful than having like really solid parents. So you move on into Thomas More, and what was that experience like? Was it just amazing, like you mentioned earlier? Was it a good experience?
Yes, I actually talked to both my college roommates this morning. One of them just got engaged, and one of them's up for a huge promotion. So, reached out to both of them today, just coincidentally. But I wouldn't trade those 4 years for anything, basketball wise, social life, academically, getting my degree, the amount of people that I was able to connect with and encounter that are still friends to this day, the lessons that I've learned. Having that responsibility is the first time you're really like, all right, it's on you to get your stuff done. You don't have somebody breathing down your neck or constantly reminding you or being there as a helpful source. You really got to grow up and the maturity process in those 4 years. Who you come in as a freshman and who you leave as a senior are two totally different people. And there may be even minor changes within those 4 years where you have different stints or stunts in your life that shape you and mold you into who you leave as. But I'm very thankful for those opportunities. I mean, I wasn't super far from home. I got to play the game that I love with guys that I love, be around great coaches and people that believed in me. We won a lot of games, so that always helps out. But then it also, I feel like it prepared me for the real world. It prepared me for my coaching profession, but it also shaped me from a character standpoint in a lot of ways too. You talk about the people; it always comes back to the people. Like the people that you're around, you turn into in some regards and in some shape of your life. So having quality people around me on a daily basis, I can see different characteristics from each of them in my own life or how I process things, how I treat people, how I try to treat people, how I approach my job. Any of those things are characteristics and qualities that I just picked up along the way from great people. And Thomas More had a great factor in that. And I go back every chance I get to hang out with those guys and talk to my college coach and AD there and professors even still in the academic realm. All of those people are still parts of my life to this day.
Yeah, it's I don't know if you've heard the quote. It's "Show me your friends, and I'll show you your future," and that's so true. talking about, you're talking about experiences and opportunities that shaped you. Did you have any that really stand out? Um, when you were growing up or in college, what were those? Did you have any particular experience?
None that completely jump out. I think the best thing I ever did though, to like from a coaching standpoint, I was finishing up my freshman year at Thomas More. The AD there had a son who was going into sixth grade. And I remember that summer between freshman and sophomore year, he had watched me my freshman year and I guess heard some different things about me that I wanted to get into coaching. So he reached out to me to coach his son's grade school team, AAU team, in sixth grade, and like I thought that was a great idea. Like I'd love to coach. Like give me an opportunity. And I remember we showed up. It was a Saturday night. We had practice earlier that day, and then he had set up some tryouts or whatever. And I remember the guys I grew up with and the talent that kind of we had. And I'm expecting like, all right, this is the AD son. Like we're gonna have some high level guys in here. Like we're gonna be great. But it was really the talent pool wasn't great. I think we had a total of 7 kids show up that night for the tryout on a random Saturday night in October and November. So we kept everybody, and I coached that team, and I really found out way more, I think, about coaching in those 3 years of coaching middle school age kids and really having to teach the game. Like you just watch it on TV, you watch the NBA or college basketball, and you think coaching is this, but like at that level, there's sometimes not much teaching that goes into it. Like they're established as who they are as players in some regards. Yeah, you can tweak some things and make some minor adjustments and help them grow. Player development's a huge part of it. But you got to really teach the game for the younger ages and really like that camp clinician type of uh, coaching mentality. I think I was able to develop maybe earlier than some people having that opportunity. But then like keeping in contact with those guys, like some of them are finishing up college right now and seeing their maturation process, who they were as a sixth grade. Some of them didn't play high school basketball at all. Like it was just a quick little 3 year run playing some basketball then, but like seeing who they've grown into, things that they're accomplishing, like those are the things also that coaching comes back to, like the relationships that you establish with those guys, still getting random texts from guys like, hey coach, I hope you're doing well. Hey coach, I just saw you. I haven't coached these guys or been around them in 5, 6, 7 years, but knowing that you played a positive role in someone's life, especially at those ages when it's so crucial. They're trying to figure out who they are. They're starting to get peer pressure from different people in those middle school ages, and really truly believing that I played a positive role in their life, not just basketball wise, but who they are as people, and hearing some of the things that they say and random texts or calls that I'll get, even sometimes from their parents. Like those are memories you can't take back. And we didn't play the most high profile tournaments or games. We played a lot of rec league Sunday afternoon games at a sports complex just down the road. But I figured out way more about coaching, I think, in those 3 years than a lot of people do in a lifetime, just from having that opportunity, and very thankful for that. And that's a huge thing. I don't know if that entirely answers your question. I mean, I've been able to work some high profile Division 1 camps and been around some NBA guys and training camps. So like, of course, you can get enamored with the spotlight, and getting to pick those people's brains and having one-on-one conversations with them or working out with guys that play at the highest level is always fun and always something that I'll never take for granted. But I think those 3 years, that opportunity of coaching middle school age kids as a college freshman, sophomore through my senior year. I mean, I still had braces in the trial. Like I'm a college kid with braces on my teeth, coaching guys that are in braces themselves at sixth and seventh grade. It's like I remember some of the parents like, "This is the guy you picked out to coach." No wonder we had 7 players show up for a trial. Who is this kid?
They're like, oh, this is the eighth guy trying out.
Same kid, like he's trying out for the team.
Yeah.
So no wonder some of that is why it played out, but I loved it. I love those guys. And like I said, seeing who they are now and what they're accomplishing in their life, graduating college and turning into grown men with uh, wedding dates set and different things, it's awesome. It really is.
Yeah. And you got to coach a little bit through college and you played through college as well. What did it look like when you were about to graduate and you wanted to get into coaching? What was that experience like and how did you end up where you ended up?
Stressful, stressful for sure. Traveling a lot, working camps and trying to network. Like I said, I knew in high school I wanted to coach. I knew in high school, so having the opportunity in college to play was great. But I knew I wanted to coach. So there was the graduate assistant positions. You would think uh, somebody that's not used to it or doesn't know much about it, you're like, oh, you can just get a GA position. It's a lot harder than that. It's a lot harder than just saying, "Hey, become a GA and you'll work your way up and you'll be fine." So traveled everywhere, Florida to Michigan to Butler. I mean, a lot of different places, trying to meet people and chase after some opportunities. Had actually accepted a couple positions that were unpaid positions, like volunteer-esque GA positions. Um, but at the time, like finishing that graduation year, I wasn't sure financially if that was the best decision for me. So after sending out countless emails and really reflecting and talking about it with the people that like you do rely and trust on, I actually backed out of both of those and taught a year of high school math at my hometown, the high school that I grew up in. But also, I knew it the whole time. Like I didn't want to be teaching high school math for my whole life. So I was still on that email train and text train and going to watch as many college practices as I could and learn from people and network. And from coaching AAU, actually, there was an assistant at the time at St. Leo who had interest or had reached out to me when I was coaching some of those kids about possible opportunities. And he knew I was a young guy and this was years prior, but he's like, hey, if you ever need anything, let me know. Well, he happened to be 3 years later one of the guys that I'm sending an email to, figuring out if they have a position available or whatnot. And he hits me back right away, like, hey, remember when I saw you coach in Kansas City or wherever? I'm pretty sure it was Kansas City. It might have been Chicago. And he's like, are you still, it looks like you're still trying to get into college coaching. I said, yes, absolutely. Do you have anything? And he's like, well, we may have something here at St. Leo. Can you come down and work camp? And this is like camp's next week. Like this is on a Monday. Like, can you come down? Like, I'm in Kentucky. This is Florida. I got to figure some stuff out. But if this is an opportunity, this is a guy that seems genuine and cares about me as a person, whatever. So I get done talking with him, and I tell my parents about him. Like, do you want to do it? Like, are you interested? And I said, yeah. Like, let's give it a shot. So I figured out. Long story short, I come down here, work the camp. Never met like Coach Randall or any of the people associated with St. Leo. I just knew Caniella through a short 5-minute conversation at a random AAU tournament in the Midwest. So 2 weeks later, I'm actually working a camp at Virginia. The camp starts on a Monday. It's Sunday night, just getting settled and doing some things in downtown Charlottesville. And I get a call from Coach Randall. Says, hey, do you want the GA position? It's yours if you want it. And knowing what I had just been through and how hard it was now, finally figured out like, all right, this is a hard profession to get into. Like, I better jump on this opportunity. So it wasn't let me think about it. Like I'm all in. Like, when do you need me there? I'll be there. So, well, we don't need you till August, but like it's yours. Like, congratulations, whatever. So it is difficult. Like, talk about leading after that graduation. I mean, I was a full year removed from graduation. Yes, I had some couple opportunities that I kind of quote unquote reneged on to make some money, but it's definitely there's a lot of long hours. There's a lot of stressful conversations, and wondering if you're going to be able to land a spot or if this is really worth it or if it's for you. A lot of that doubt can kind of creep in your mind, like, oh, this is too hard. Like, I'll just stick to this. I'll make some money and so be it. And it was definitely stressful, but I'm thankful for that kind of like perseverance period that I had to endure, of maybe doing some things that I didn't want to do. We talked about that at the beginning of this. Is like there's things in your life that you just don't like. Like there's things that you're not gonna like to do, and I've had to endure that. I had to endure it for a full academic year at least of teaching high school math, and um, sacrificing some things and some opportunities to finally get to where I want to get to.
Yeah, and I want to touch on that a little bit because I think, like you said, many people don't realize how tough it actually is to get into college athletics, professional athletics. Everyone thinks that there's lots of jobs out there, but there's a lot more people looking for them than there
Yeah,
are positions available. So you really have to work for it. But one of the things, like we met at, I think it was the Butler camp in 2000, what maybe
12 or 13. Yeah,
13? Yeah, I think it
yeah.
was 13. And that's when we met. And we also wound up working in Virginia too. I don't know if that was the same year you got the.
I'm pretty sure we were walking together
Were
and
we
down.
at dinner? I think we were
Yeah,
at
I'm
dinner
pretty
downtown
sure that's
Charlottesville.
the night. So we're kind of intertwined here and connected as far as all this goes. I'm pretty sure that was the same night.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it's fun. It's fun to hear you say that, and was there throughout that process with you at the time. But let's go back to when you're starting to identify like camps to work at, emails. There's a lot of persistence right there just doing that, and then the fact that you may not have gotten the response you wanted or an opportunity that you wanted after doing that, and then having to go work, your high school doing math, but still consistently like saying, no, you know what, I'm going to keep going after this because I know it's what I want to do. How did you go about identifying places to work? Because also it's not so easy getting positions just to work camp too. I mean, or working with NBA teams. So what was that like, and how did you identify those places?
Right. So, I mean, and now I see it from the college side of things. Like, we get a ton of emails from guys that want to be GAs or whatever. And like the initial responses, all right, that position's filled, but you can come work camp. Like, it's the easy way to get camp workers sometimes and figure out if they're truly serious about it. And the sacrifice you kind of make because like sometimes you're out your own money, you're not making much, you're traveling city to city and working 5 camps in 3 weeks, and it's a grind. Like camp season is definitely a grind. So a lot of that came from like having like I coached my AD son, so he was a little bit connected on possible opening, so to speak, from a GA. But then also identifying locations, whether it be from a geographic standpoint or also like a style of play that I was interested in, or the kind of quote unquote like culture that you see on TV or hear about, identifying some of those locations. Like, okay, I'd love to go learn from them for a week or be around them for a week and see if I can pick up anything. So your Butlers of the world, like, yeah, they've just been to back-to-back national championship games, but seeing how Coach Stevens carried himself and his assistants and how genuine they were in their responses and correspondence and trying to work camp, like that always stuck out to me. Um, and like you sometimes you gotta just put out flyers to everyone, so to speak, and like who's gonna say yes and who's gonna say no. So there was a lot of blind emails where like maybe they had a camp opportunity, but it conflicted with one of the ones I was serious about or wanted to work, and you have to say no to. But I think more so than anything, like I was talking about the geographic portion, but then also like who are they as people? What do they stand for? What kind of players do they have in their program? Is it somewhere that I could see, like, if there was a GA opportunity, could I see myself being happy there? Um, and that played a huge factor in all of it. And I mean, a lot of things can go a lot of different ways. I mean, I didn't get necessarily a job from any of those camps, but some of my closest friends and coaching are guys that I've worked those camps with, and looking back on it, like that, it's a huge learning tool to figure out about yourself. It's a huge networking piece to meet other people. But then also in a position where I am now, I think it's an opportunity to help others that are interested in the same kind of career path, so to speak, letting them know, hey, you should look at this, or hey, you should try this camp. maybe go work for them for a week in the summer. Players that currently play for you that speak about being interested in coaching down the line. I think having those or having that experience myself going through the process allows me to help them now kind of navigate some opportunities that may exist for them.
Yeah. And that's one thing with your story. It's just one thing that's really good to remind people is that when you're going through these camps or you're even coaching, that little the elementary school team when you're in college, or even when you're playing, you're in practice, it's the things that you do when no one's looking. When the coach's heads turn, are you going to touch the line? Are you going to keep running? When you're coaching, are you going to do a good job, even though it's little kids that may not pay attention at the time? If you're at work in camp, are you going to be focused on trying to be the best camp coach you can be when no one's looking either? So one of the things that you see throughout your story is wherever you're at, you try to do a really good job. And because you do that, people notice and people don't forget that. Just like probably the coach of St. Leo at the time when he first saw you and first met you over in Kansas City or Chicago, wherever that was, he saw something in you because you were doing a good job where you were at. You obviously wanted to get somewhere, but you were focused on doing a good job where you're at.
Right, and you never know who's watching, and you only get one chance for a first impression. So even if your head's turned and you don't think someone's peeking in the door or have their eyes on you, like that's a first impression for a lifetime that never is going to go away. That's how they're going to remember you. And sometimes you got 10 seconds to make the best first impression that you can, or an opportunity is lost, or a viewpoint about you is formed that you can't get back sometimes. But I think what you're talking about, I always say this to our guys, and it's something I really try to live by, is just being where your feet are. So, like, my mind has to be present. Yeah, there may be 50 other things that I need to get done or talk to or whatever, but if you're sitting right in front of me, my responsibility is to be my best version for you. I need to be present, be intentional. And that starts with like understanding, all right, my feet are planted right here. My mind can't be 10 states away or 5 phone calls later. Like it needs to be right here. And it carries over to like a basketball standpoint, like being in the present, like be in this moment. Forget about what happened 3 plays ago. Be present, be where your feet are right now and make the most of it. I talked about earlier, like that champion mentality, like be a champion. It's written on my board in my office, like be a champion. And I can't be a champion in anything if I'm trying to be 50 different places or going through the motions like you talk about when someone's not watching. You talk about like the camp stuff. A lot of the kids that you're coaching in camp, it's just babysitting. Like they're not there for basketball. They're there for
Yeah.
the concession stand. They're there for their friends. Like cheap babysitting for their parents for a week. Like it has nothing to do with basketball. So like you, as a guy that wants to get into coaching, they don't care if you can teach them how to dribble behind their back. Like, coach, when can I go to the concession stand? Like,
Yeah.
how many bathroom breaks are you going to take today? Like, those kind of things are you're figuring out. But it goes back to, like I said, like being a champion. You got to be intentional. I hate when my players go through the motions, or I hate when they put stuff off. And it goes back to what we talked about at the very beginning, like those qualities and characteristics that were instilled in me at an early age, just carry over right now to everything that you do. And like, of course, like I'm far from being the best at anything, but if I keep that mentality, I think of being intentional and being a champion and being present. Uh, it'll vibrate to others. Talk about like people noticing, and that goes for everything that you do. It can't just be when the bright lights are on or when a certain group of people are around you, because word travels fast. So how you treat this person that you think can't do anything for you, they may have a weird connection that you never know about, and it gets to them five people later, and it's like, yeah, he treated me like a jerk. He thought he was too good for me. You don't want him. Like he's not somebody that you should surround yourself with. So you always got to be cognizant of that, and you don't have to worry about it if you're true to yourself. Like you don't have to try to worry about putting on a different hat around a different person. You can stay true to who you are as an individual, no matter who you're around or what room you're in. Like be you, be confident in who you are and what you stand for. and just be intentional with the people that are put in front of you.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we get into your college coaching, were there any coaches that you got to watch and learn from that you really thought highly of from camps and working with the NBA guys? Were there any guys that really stood out to you, and why did they stand out?
I think it's an assistant, Terry Johnson, who was at Butler at the time, who just got hired by Purdue. I remember watching his individual workouts with guys. I remember feeling his energy no matter what day of camp it was, or what maybe was going on in the recruiting world. He changed coaches. Brad Stevens goes to the Celtics in the middle of the summer, and he stays on with the new staff, and how he handled all of that. And then watching him on the sidelines, having some opportunities to sit behind their bench and hear his interactions with their players, being in their locker room a couple different times, like having that. And this is self-centered a little bit, but like he's a short guy, and I'm a short guy trying to coach a bunch of tall, athletic guys. So seeing like, okay, like you can relate to them no matter who you are, stature wise. Like if you really care about them and they know you really care about them, like they're gonna buy in. They're gonna do their best to get whatever it is that you want out of them. And there was just something about him that always sticks with me. I just remember his personality, his charisma, his positive energy, and how his players responded to him was a huge piece for me. So I took I think a lot from him, just from watching him. I've probably had 4 or 5 conversations with him in my lifetime, but just being able to watch him on a fairly consistent basis for a couple summers and seasons, it's definitely carried with me, and I still lean on a lot of that information that I feel like I picked up from him 5, 6, 7 years later. He's one that definitely jumps out. My college coach, I still rely on a lot, seeing how he did some things. And then also, I've been around Coach Randall now for 7 years. So what I took from him in years 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 still play a factor in what we do in year 7. And I've learned a lot from him too that I can't go without saying. Um, so I think if I was to give three, those are three that definitely jump out to me.
Yeah, all good ones. So you go to St. Leo as a GA, and you get started. You finally got your opportunity in coaching, and what did that feel like? I'm sure, obviously, it was very exciting, but now it's like the real world. You're in the coaching grind for sure.
Right, your head's spinning fast. I thought, I mean, I've played on good teams. I've been fortunate to learn from a lot of high IQ basketball minds, and comes to a situation where maybe you think more than you do, or think you know more than you do. So stepping in to and also like the Division 2 level was different for me. Like I'd been around Division 1, I played Division 3 NAI, been a part of really good high school teams, but Division 2 actually had zero experience in. Like it was something totally brand new to me. So learning the ins and outs of this level was a challenge, but then also just how fast things come at you. It goes back to a little bit you talk about, like it's hard to get into coaching and you think like coaching is just on the floor, but there's so much behind the scenes, administratively, paperwork, but then also just the consistent and efficient communication that's required in your day-to-day operations and interactions with people across campus, within your athletic department, within your own team. Things that you just kind of, that's somebody else's job. Like somebody else will take care of that. Well, no, like especially as a GA or one of the lower guys on the totem pole, so to speak, like that falls on your shoulders, and you got to figure it out. You can't always be going to the guy above you, like, hey, how do you do this? Hey, yeah, they're gonna help you, but at some point, hey, figure it out. Like this is on you now. You gotta get it. So I think that first year specifically, my head was going a million miles per hour. And the recruiting piece is a huge part of it. Like for somebody that had always been a player, recruiting is like the lifeline a lot of good programs, but not having any experience in that. It took a while to figure out and build, and still building and still figuring things out, and totally different recruiting now than it was in years 2 and 3 for sure. But once you get into it, it never completely slows down. Like there's still days where you're like, I can't get all this done today. Like there's just so
Yeah.
much to do. And but I think just being around great people again. Like I was fortunate to be around some really good dudes, Caniella and Coach Randall, who have taken the time to really focus on me as an individual, not just as a coach, and helping me grow, and providing positive feedback, constructive criticism, every piece of the way. I mean, we have meetings on a pretty regular basis of how things are going, how can I help you. Um, those conversations go a long way to help you get settled in to your own kind of niche and figuring out what works for you and timelines that work for you. So it's been a long process, been a great one. But that first year for sure, my head, I couldn't keep up. I was very thankful to be around great guys that helped me out a ton.
Yeah. And were you at St. Leo for 2 years before you moved,
So
or three?
I was actually only here for about 8 months, probably.
Was it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so Coach Randall, after that first year, he took a job at Lindenwood in St. Charles, Missouri, another Division II school. And I remember it was Mother's Day. So coming up, I guess it'd be 6 years ago now, he called me over to his house and gave me the official news. We knew it was a good possibility, but gave me the official news that he had accepted it and he wanted me to go with him. So after moving from Kentucky to Florida, I was packing up my bags the next week to go from Florida to Missouri. So I spent 4 years there with him, and now just completed my second year back at St. Leo. So 3 total at St. Leo, 4 at Lindenwood, all 7 with Coach Randall. But it was a weird GA situation. Most people that get into the grad assistant positions, like they're 2 years out of school, and then you got to figure out your next step because the next GA is coming in, and they got to get you out. Like you're finished with your masters, it's somebody else's turn kind of to go with it. And I think it worked out for me. A blessing in disguise is that change in location where that GA position kind of turned into more of an assistant position just out of necessity and changing locations and familiarity with how he liked his program to be run, and me being the guy that he took with him, having some background information kind of catapulted me into maybe an assistant position quicker than some of the people would have that opportunity. So I never would have knew it at the time, but it was definitely probably very fortunate that it worked out how it did.
Yeah. And you were at Lindenwood for 4 years. Now you're back at St. Leo. You guys just won conference championship, correct?
Yeah, first conference championship, school history this year. Different year, no doubt, but whenever you can go out on top, there's not much that can beat that.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with the year that we've had with COVID and all the precautions that have to take place that people don't think about behind the scenes in basketball. There's a lot of things that go on. So
Right.
with all those things and all the changes that occur, it's like, how do you adapt? How do you make it work? And obviously, you guys did a good job of that this year. Um,
It means so much more. I think when you have to go through the fire. If it was easy, everybody would be doing this. But we had a week pause right before the conference tournament. Like we had a guy, was actually our GA who tested positive on a Friday. We had one more regular season game left, and then the conference tournament the next week, and he tested, or excuse me, 2 or 3. I can't remember exactly. Regardless, we had 10 days off in a row going into the conference tournament without practice. No one's touched a ball. Like they have an hour each day during their quarantine to get outside and run for physical activity. Otherwise, like they're legit quarantined in their room, not leaving. People are bringing food to them. So even to come off of that and win 3 in a row in the conference tournament, it meant so much. And I'm forever in depth to these guys for the amount of sacrifices that they made, their genuine care for each other. I mean, we had a very balanced group, a very caring group, and a group that was all about winning. It was really fun to coach, really fun to be around, despite all the protocols and hoops we had to jump through to get to where we wanted to get to. Where some people weren't able to play a game all year. So we're definitely thankful on our end that we were fortunate enough to get a season and get a championship out of it. But it's also left a taste in their mouth where they want more, knowing and hoping that next year is more of a true season and true um, approach to winning championships and so on and so forth. So we got a lot of guys hungry for that next step, that next bite, so to speak. And I think it's got a chance to be really special. I'll say that. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's amazing. The title of this podcast is Building Excellence, and so building is a process. It takes time. It's not some overnight thing. And so also you've touched on so many great things, but once people taste success or they taste a little bit of something positive, it allows them to believe in themselves, to have more confidence. Like, hey, we did it, and we can do it again. But we can actually build upon that. But it's a process of a lot of hard work and a culmination of all that to get to the point to where you're at.
Right. And you can't build if you don't have a solid foundation. Like you cannot build. So I think a lot of times, like this is our second year back, there was a lot of guys that like we didn't recruit or we didn't know much about, like guys that you inherit maybe from a previous coaching staff. So coming in and trying to establish the culture that you want, and that we culture of excellence is kind of what we preach, like a culture of excellence. It's one of our core values within our program, within our university. And excellence is one of those words when you're talking about being great, it sometimes gets overlooked. Like what is excellence? Like what is that? And I think like for us, it goes back to that mentality of being a champion. Like give your best every single time. And you may not win a championship next year. Like you may not, but you can't go through the motions and expect it. Like you have to put your best foot forward every single day. The days that you're feeling great, the days that you're feeling under the weather, or you had a poor performance on a test, or there's a friendship that's going AWire, or mom and dad have some stuff going on back home, whatever it is, like putting that kind of behind you or dealing with it on different parameters, but just being great in everything every single day. It's an everyday thing. And of course, you're going to have better days than others. But the excellence piece is crucial. And for us, it takes some time to like lay that foundation. But now that you're talking about like they've tasted it and we feel confident with the foundation that we've established, now like the building part takes place. You start putting the pieces together on a more concrete basis to get to where you want to get to, and all of it can fall apart in a heartbeat too if you don't have something to go back on, something underneath you that holds you up. And I think for us, we're at a point, not just from a basketball standpoint, but just from an overall character culture standpoint of our program, where we can take the right steps forward.
Yeah, and to touch on something, there's always been distractions. Like, we had distractions growing up, but it's obviously kind of been more advanced recently where you've got so many distractions going on for, the guys that come in and play for you from middle school, high school, college. How do you go about coaching guys when there's so many things going on, and how do you get the best out of guys when there's so many things that can be distractions?
Yeah, and the social media world, like obviously social media has its positive that you can take from it, but there's a lot of negative that can come from it as well. And it allows everybody to have an opinion and everybody to have a voice. So something that we always talk about with our guys is the most important voice that you hear is your own. Like you're the one talking to yourself. It's your voice in your head saying whether that person's right or this person has a good idea, or what kind of effort I'm going to put forward that day, or am I good enough, not good enough? What kind of shooter am I? Like, what is your voice telling you? Not what is social media telling you? What are your parents telling you? What are your brothers, sisters, boyfriend, girlfriend, like what are they telling you? Like, what are you telling yourself? I think that really matters, because it's the voice you hear most. Like it is like we're constantly, whether we think we are or not, we're talking to ourselves. Like we have our thoughts, we have our opinions, and they're running through our head at a vibrant race all day long. Some people lose sleep at night because you can't get out of your own way in your own head. But we always make a big deal, like in our settings, like whether it's on a bus or team meals or in the locker room, like the phones are turned off. We want them to be where their feet are. We want them to have genuine conversations, look their teammates in their eyes, look their professors in their eyes. Same thing when they go to class. We require like the first two rows in the middle, no cell phones, no hats, like all of those things, so they can be more present. We understand like they're going to go back to their dorms or apartments or their living situations and be able to hear all the stuff that maybe they've kind of not heard for that day. But if if you have great leaders within your team, not just from coaches, but your team captains and your upperclassmen, or guys that you've established within your program as the leaders, and that can be anybody. It could be a freshman or a 4-year senior. Doesn't matter. Like some people have it more naturally than others, and some people do it by example. But you can't do any all the distractions are going to win out if you don't have a strong culture. If they're going to win out, there's just too many of them that exist. So you got to really have your hands and grips, and you got to trust your guys too. Like I think a lot of that for us comes in the recruiting process, making sure that we're recruiting guys of high character and stability, that understand that it's bigger than them. Like they got to get over themselves. We always talk about it's a Popovich thing. Like we want guys that we can lose with, because when things are going bad, it can go really, really bad in a hurry if you're not careful. So having guys that we know when the fire is hot, like we can be right there with them and step out of it on the other side and be better from it. I think that's a huge piece of it. But can't do any of that either if you don't care about them, and showing that on a daily basis, not just at practice, not just during the games. Like they go home for summer break, or you're not talking to them for the next 3 months. Like being intentional in their lives. Sometimes there's things that they want you to know and don't want you to know that are private, whatever. But you gotta really work to be more than just their coach at practice for the 2 hours or during the game. You gotta work harder than that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to go back to that self-talk point that you just mentioned. You ever listen to John Gordon or heard of John Gordon?
Yeah, John Gordon. We actually read. We read the Energy Bus
Okay.
as a team. So we talk about the energy vampires and everything that come along with kind of like that self doubt. And we do that every year with our guys. At the first year, we ran it as coaches, but now we kind of delegated to our captains or guys that have went through the process with us, to kind of spearhead that, lead it, and it plays huge dividends. Like we've seen guys make monumental shifts in their everyday approach just from reading his books. We've read Training Camp as a team as well, but he's really big on the positive energy and how contagious that is, and how you respond to things, and all of that plays a huge factor on a team setting, but also on an individual basis. Because if you're not adding to it, you're definitely subtracting. And you can't just be lukewarm. You can't be neutral. You got to be moving forward. So having some of his characteristics and qualities, it does play a factor in that mental voice that we talked about.
Absolutely. And one of the things that he said, there's a guy that I can't remember his name, but he's like the first guy to do a double Ironman back to back or something like that. But he asked him for the best advice he ever received. And he said that I've learned to I've learned to talk to myself instead of listening to myself. And I thought that was a really good point. Kind of
I
goes
like
back to
that.
that self-talk, because we can listen to ourselves and all this stuff that gets in our head, and it can say you can't do it, you shouldn't do it, there's no reason for you to do it. Instead, learning how to develop habits to get yourself talking to yourself, like positive self-talk. It doesn't have to be, you know, off in the clouds type positivity, but it can be real positivity where you can be consistent and learn to train yourself to think positive and to have that self-talk. How do you feel like, what are some ways where you can do that and implement it on a daily basis?
I think in our profession, in our line of work, some of the best things that I can do is just go rebound for a player. Because when it's just me and him at a basket, the walls sometimes come down and you can kind of figure out, all right, what's going on in their life, and could be great, could be all fine and dandy, but sometimes you figure out it's not all fine and dandy and there's some real serious stuff that goes on that maybe they don't want everybody, their teammates or other coaches to know, and they just have that like loose moment where they're candid and let you know. But then also, I think when we're talking about building that up, it comes with who we are as coaches too. Like if we're constantly barking at them and telling them what they're not good at or where they're letting the team down, like of course we have to hold them accountable. Like you talk about that excellence and building that standard, like that stuff matters, but how do we help them get there in a positive way? And I always go with the Oreo method and a lot of things I do, like the good on both sides and maybe the bad in the middle. Start with something positive, throw something in the middle where it's like, okay, we need to be better at this, or this is unacceptable. Like can't let this happen again, and then finish with something good. Like start in conversations building up as opposed to tearing down. I think is a huge way to it. And sometimes I'm not always the best at that. Like you just got to get the point across quick and get it to them. But trying really, really hard about being a positive voice in their life. Like you talk about who they're surrounded with, they have to have coaches that let them know they believe in them, that they can do this, that this may be just a bad stretch in the season or a bad stretch in play, or the adversity that they're going through right now is not going to last forever. So trying to really focus on that, and the words, the body language that I have as a coach. I mean, there's days where you're exhausted or you're tired or you're running from meeting to meeting or putting a film edit together and right out onto the floor for a workout or practice. And like you got just like we asked for them for the distraction, you got to leave that behind as a coach too. Like you got to be able to step into those 2 hours, or it could be a 30-minute workout. Like they're yours now. Like who you are, what vibes you're giving off, the body language that you have, the tone of voice that you use, they pick up on it real quick. So trying to live by like what you preach to them and carry that out in everything that you do, it there's no replacement for. Like you have to be on top of your stuff. And I think that carries over to them and that voice that they're using. Like, hey, coach may be having a million things going on, but for that 30 minutes, man, I got his best. Like I owe it to him to give my best for the next 30. Or coach, man, he really believes in me. Like I don't want to let him down. Those same kind of things that I think I used as an individual for myself, try to help them with as players now for them.
Yeah, and talk on the body language part for a second, because I know everyone, we always talk about, talk, self-talk, talking to other people, but I've always thought that body language is so important. Having good body language, it's something that doesn't get talked about very often, but is so key to being a good player, to being not just good in basketball, but good in life and business and parenting, everything. Talk about that real quick and just what you
Right.
think about that.
When you step into a room, you don't have to say a word for somebody to know who you are as a person or what you're feeling. I think that's critical. We talked about that first impression. It maybe never comes with a conversation. Like that first impression can be how you carry yourself, the facial expressions that you use. Are you smiling? Like, are you
Yeah.
smiling? Not everybody's a smiler, not everybody's a laugher, but like that stuff matters, and it really matters to your guys. Like they know right away when I'm stressed out or when something's not going my way, just from a peek in my door, or the tone of voice maybe that I'm having. And I'm a huge like wake up early, run, get my workout in, like kind of stuff in the morning. The days that I'm not able to do that, I have to really check myself, because I know it's a lot easier for me on those days to be short tempered or angry or come across as a way that I don't mean. Like I really don't mean it, but I know I haven't like been able to really focus in. Like those times in the morning for me are times where I can like, okay, this is what I need to do today. This is who I need to be, and helps me out that way. But like the body language piece, like I said, you don't have to say a word, and somebody can read you just like a book. So being very cognizant of that. I try always to enter rooms with smiles, no matter what room I'm stepping into. The things you do with your hands and your feet and your arms, like all of that matters. Your eye rolls, your facial expressions when you hear something, all of that. It's super critical. And like you said, you may not know eyes are on you. We talked about earlier, but eyes are on you, and it could be somebody that you don't think plays a huge factor, or it could be the most important person you'll ever meet. You never know. So being cognizant of that in every room that you step into.
Yeah, body language is so important, and just something as simple as having a smile is something that can really change the dynamic of a room. As cheesy as that might sound, is very important. And I want to touch on this too because you were talking about having, working out in the mornings, and I wanted to ask you, you have a morning routine that you go off of, and how does that get your day going right? And just describe that real quick.
Yeah, every single day. So Monday through Saturday, like I'm waking up. I'm a runner. I used to hate running when I played. Like I was not somebody that enjoyed conditioning. I never thought I would be a runner. But I try to run at least 4 miles every morning, and then I'll finish my run with like what I call my Jesus walk, like cooling myself down, but also having my daily conversations with Him, uh, whether it be through prayer or just things that are going through my head. And it really relaxes me, calms me down, allows me to have, I think, a positive perspective for the day and approach it in a healthy manner. And then I'll do my little like lift. I'm not a huge like weightlifting guy, but I do like to do a little bit of it. So I'll do that Monday through Saturday, like religiously. I mean, it's every single day. Then Sunday is a little bit different. Like I always start my Sunday before I do anything else with a church service. The last couple of years, it's had to be online most times, but I won't do anything on Sunday like work related or anything until I've had my church service and that time. But then I'll get on with my day. But that's how my days start. And there's some days where all right, you got a staff meeting at 8 a.m. All right, may mean I need to wake up at 5 today versus waking up at 6 or 6:30 or 7 to get my run in. But I do, and being in Florida, you don't want to wait till 3 o'clock to run. I'll tell you that
Yeah.
it's too hot. So you got to beat the sun up sometimes for that. But it's crucial. Like I said, when I skip one of those days, I notice it right away in my demeanor, my behavior, my body language, my communication and tone with whether it be players or friends or coworkers. I always notice it. There's huge differences, and sometimes there's situations and circumstances that come up that prohibit me from getting that time in the morning. But I'd say 99.9% of the time, that's how I'm starting my days.
Yeah, I mean, when you bench press 400 pounds, yeah, that's bound to get you
That's not
woken up.
me. That's not me.
Yeah. Well, what about for somebody that says, "Oh, well, that's all great. He can do it, but I'm not that disciplined. I don't want to wake up in the morning." How can people take little increments where they can start having more of a consistent lifestyle where they have a routine?
I also like the 1% mentality, like getting better 1% every single day. You do that for 365 days a year, you got 365% better. Like you got to look at it, I think, in short chunks versus the long term or larger chunks. And that could be so, you talk about the habits, like it could be something as simple as like where you put your workout gear or where you put your shoes in the morning, like what time you go to bed. People that like to read or don't like to read, I picked this up from someone like putting a book on your pillow when you leave. That way, when you come home, before you can go to sleep at night, like you see that book, you're more apt to open that book and maybe read a couple pages in it versus if it's sitting on a shelf out of the way. you never have to move it. It's comfortable right where it is
It,
versus going out of the way. So being intentional about that. And then over time, like maybe you're not a runner, maybe you're not a reader, maybe you're not a healthy eater, but how you approach the short term aspect of it, and then also having an accountability partner, I think is a huge deal. Whether that's journaling yourself and you're going back and forth maybe internally, or you have someone externally that's going through the process with you, and maybe you have bad days together, but you have good days together too, where they're have the same struggle, so to speak, that maybe you're having, or maybe they've been great at it for the last 10 years of your life, and they're just there as a helping hand and a source for you, are huge pieces. And it goes back to like who what matters to you, you'll make time for. Like what matters to you, you'll definitely find a way to make it happen. So if you're intentional about being more disciplined or waking up earlier, going to sleep earlier, whatever the situation is, you'll find a way. You'll definitely find a way.
yeah, and I was about to joke, it's like, well, if you put it on your nightstand, you can at least read the cover of the book, But honestly, I mean that really is that 1%. Get started doing that, and then read the next page, and read a couple pages, and it builds, it compounds. Like consistency compounds. And then I think John Wooden had a quote that I've always loved. The smallest deed is better than the greatest intention. So how do you take those steps where you actually can consistently make progress towards something that you want to be doing? So that's great stuff. Do you have any favorite books that you've read, or any material you listen to that you like?
Uh, so I listen. One of my favorite podcasts is the Locker Room podcast. It actually comes from a church back home, but it's focused on the male uh, side of things, and maybe conversations that occurred that could only occur in a locker room, but more uh, motivational, and guys that have been through maybe similar situations as myself. It's one of my favorite things to listen to. They're on a little bit of a summer break right now, but the Locker Room podcast is huge for me. I'm a big Bob Goff guy, so all of his books, Love Does, Everybody Always, Dream Big. Those are three of my favorite that I can just recycle through. They're easy reads, but there's so many short one-liners that can apply to every single day life. How you treat people, how you view yourself, how you view others. That I love. Those would be my favorites. I've kind of got more into recently, more of like the music side of things, like the lyrics from songs, and I'm doing a lot of listening there to the Cody Carnes of the world, and Hillsongs of the world. That 'cause, again, like what you're feeding yourself, I think matters, and hearing just positive song lyrics go a long way in your daily mood and your interactions. So trying to get rid of maybe some of the other things that I was feeding my brain through music, I think has been a huge deal. Um, but I think that's where I am right now. The Locker Room podcast is huge for me. And the Bob Goff books are my favorite. Like I said, I've probably read Love Does 50, 60 times. Like I just keep reading it because there's so many things from it that I love.
Yeah, he's a fun guy to listen to, watch, and then read from, but he's a great example as well. You
Hmm.
talk about faith a lot. Why is faith so important to you in your life?
Uh, I wouldn't be anything without it. I think it's as simple as that. I was in a situation like Mother's Day coming up. I'm so thankful. It was really my mom, both my parents, but really my mom and my grandmother and grandfather on her side that uh, put that foundation, or at least idea in the back of my head that there's something bigger than myself out there and what you're living for. So I'm thankful for that. But I think in our setting, in the athletic world or the business world, even, like you get so caught up in like that next move, or like in our profession, it's winning and losing, and for the sales world, it's the next sale, and there's a lot of ways you can do that are shortcuts, or maybe not the right way to do it, and it's all caught up in winning. And I always tell people, like, the best win of my life was giving my life over, like, to someone that's not in a game, and somebody that physically I've never met before in my life. But when Jesus went to the cross and rose from the grave, like, that's all I need to know about winning. The empty tomb and the empty grave is the number one win that me, myself, and other believers I think will ever have in our life, and that's without question. And that definitely shapes everything that I do. How I treat people, talking about like the serving mentality, all of that. It all comes back to my faith. I don't I don't I don't take it lightly. I'll say that. There's obviously things I need to improve and be better with, but there's I wouldn't be where I am. I wouldn't be where I am without that.
Yeah, that's great. And, one of the things as you've talked, a lot of the things you talked about are really, biblical principles that you try to model to your guys as a coach, as a leader, serving them, caring for them. Like what a great example within the Bible. So that's really important. But, I want to wind it down here. Want to ask you some questions.
Okay.
First, what would you define like building excellence? What does that mean to you? And what is that, what do you think about when you think about that?
Building excellence to me it's an everyday thing. We talk about it, not taking days off, but just putting your best foot forward on a daily basis, doing things that you don't like to do, having conversations that you don't like to have, but having a mentality of giving anything less than my best is unacceptable. And it may not result in instant success. It may not result in the satisfactory or recognition or acknowledgement that I think comes with it. But being able to go to bed at night or rest with myself that, you know what, I gave my best today. Like, I gave my best. And eventually that's going to be enough. We talk about the 1% better. Like, at some stage, if I keep staying persistent and putting my best foot forward and giving my best effort, at some stage it's gonna pay off. And you can't do that if you're taking days off or you're caught up in yourself when things aren't going your way. So like the building excellence thing, like you can't relax. Like it can't just be when you feel like it. It's got to be every day, and anything worth accomplishing like comes through hard work. And I forget who says it, but everything that you want in life is on the other side of hard. Like you got to get through the hard stuff, and then everything that you want is going to be on the other side of that. And I think the building excellence mentality comes with going through hard things.
Yeah, that's so good. That's a great way to sum it up. But we'll end by doing a little fire round here.
Okay.
So I'll say a word and then you just say whatever comes to your mind, right?
Okay.
So discipline comes from
Hard work
my mission is
to help others,
if I could do it all over again, I would.
not trade a thing.
You can do anything if
Put your mind to it and have great people around you.
confidence comes from.
Preparation.
Awesome. Well, Ryan, thanks for being on the show. Really appreciate it, man. There's been such great stuff you just shared. If someone wants to obviously follow you guys play basketball, but if someone wants to get into contact with you or follow you, what are the best ways to do that?
Yeah, I give my cell phone to anybody. 606-584-9014. It's been the same since sixth grade. Anybody can reach out anytime. I'm more than happy to talk. I appreciate you having me on. I'm really looking forward to following future podcasts and hearing some stories from some other people. But this has been great.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being on the show, Ryan. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Thanks.